You're listening to the Intuitive Mastery Podcast. Hi, I'm Connolly, and with over 15 years of intuitive healing and teaching experience, I'm here to help you celebrate intuition and value authenticity to create a world where you have the freedom to live your best life. This podcast is here to teach you how to apply the principles of spirituality, healing, and mindset to have true and lasting joy, all from the inside out. This is the Intuitive Mastery Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this podcast. One of the most common questions I've been getting lately is, what do I need to do in healing? What is involved in healing? What is the process? Why do I do it? How do I move through? And so I just kind of want to give you some insight into the kind of work that we do within one-on-one sessions, but also sometimes in meditations, because ultimately what we want to be doing is moving from a situation that we're in, moving into a situation that we want to be in. And that is the basis of all healing. My life isn't working. How do I make it better? So usually when we are going into a healing process, we are recognizing that something in our world doesn't work. So whether it's health, whether it's work, whether it's finances, relationships, whatever's coming up for us that's creating any level of suffering or blockage or sabotage, and we just recognize that this isn't working for us. Okay, how I'm showing up in my life, I don't feel safe, I feel stressed, I get worried about these interactions, I find it hard to get this work done, I'm not sleeping properly, I sabotage my food. There are all of these various different ways in which we can show up. And when we sit with who we want to be in our ideal sense, right? If I was to dream up the ideal version of myself, what does she look like? Okay. I would, maybe meditate early in the morning. I would get enough sleep. I would be this successful in my work. I would have this kind of relationship. And I would feel amazing in my clothes, right? Broad picture. And then I can sit and go, hang on, how much of that is true right now? How much of that is actually happening in my life? Do I feel amazing in my body? Do I have the perfect relationship? Is my work taking off? And if none of those things are happening, or only one of those things are happening, that is an opportunity for me to go, why is that? If I want to do a deep dive into each of those sections, I might be able to start to reveal different beliefs, different patterns of behavior, and different imprints that are stopping where I am and who I am at the moment from becoming who I ideally want to be. And there's always going to be something. If you are not well and truly on your way to becoming that human, or if you're not already there, there will be a block, a sabotage, a belief, or an imprint that is stopping you from being that human. And this is why we very often find change difficult. It's when we have this dream about who we want to be, but we never actually reach it. Why is that? Why is that? It's because our subconscious minds and our vibrational imprinting is keeping us safe and stuck where we are. And it's almost like pushing, massive levels of bricks up a hill with no sight of the end and no ability or no support to kind of push them up. It feels like an impossible task. So I get these really interesting conversations with people, especially lately, where I'll talk to them about what some of their beliefs might be that are holding them back, because that is one of the things that I can do. I can talk to them about why things are not working out the way that they want. I can identify their emotions and their family constellations and whatever's going on. And their number one question is, but how do I fix that? How do I heal that? So the way that we do it, basically, there are multiple modalities out there that reach this depth and level of healing. But the thing that has always stood out to me and has by far and away surpassed everything else is doing compassion work. And what that involves is it involves firstly identifying the situation, which I usually have done with people. And this is a process that you can learn to do with yourself. And that is essentially getting really curious. Okay, so let's say, for an example, you're finding it really hard to progress in your career and you don't know why. Okay, there's obviously practical stuff. So are you doing all the right things? Do you have the right training? Are you, if you're an online entrepreneur, are you using the right platforms? Are you au fait with the processes that you're using? If you're in a physical workplace, do you know the systems that are there? Do you feel, really up to date and current with the information that you need to have in your job? So there's the physical level. And if those are not working, there's usually like an emotional or a belief reason why. So a belief might be you've got imposter syndrome and you don't feel like anyone's going to listen to you. It might be that your emotions are really up and down at the moment because your relationship is stressful or because your health is not great. You may have an inability to use particular software and you just keep getting stuck on it no matter how much you work on it. And then you start feeling hopeless and helpless, and then you start feeling worthless. So we start to kind of we kind of dig the surface of the problem. So the problem might be, I don't know which platform to use, or I'm really trying to use something that's not working, or it might be in the physical workspace. I sort of have the information and I sort of have the knowledge, but I don't know how to use it. Or it might be, the relationships that I have I keep attracting bad bosses. So there's all of these kind of surface level, real life, 3D physical things that are happening. And then as we start to dig, we go, okay, cool. How does that make me feel? That's the first question. How does that make me feel? Like, what's actually happening in my body when this happens? And you might not be able to recognize an emotion, but you might be able to recognize a sensation. Okay, so when I can't do this, I get this really tightness in my throat, and I actually feel really like I'm getting a sore throat and I don't feel good. Okay, cool. Let's tune into the throat. What's happening in the throat? Can you feel an emotion in there? Is there anything showing up for you there? If there is, do we need to dive into that? So can we process some emotion here? And there's various techniques on how to process emotion. You can call it through the body. You can have a conversation with that emotion. You can send compassion to that emotion. You can do the Basha kind of circular technique with emotion. You can do there's another technique where you kind of acknowledge the energy of that emotion and you move it through your body. So there's various ways at which you can meet that emotion. But what I actually really like, and I find, that process is very powerful, but there's another process where you go, okay, why is that emotion there? Like, what belief system, what thought process, what is showing up in that space? And then you can actually start to dive and go through the layers of experience, okay? And then when you can recognize and understand, and there's usually a lot of why is that there? Where does that come from? And always trust your instincts on this. And this is a skill and it's a process, okay? So this is why it's really great to do it with one-on-one, with practitioners that are seasoned in this. But if you want to learn yourself, this is actually the process. So let's go into the thoughts, beliefs, and reasons behind the emotion. And you just keep diving. Why is that there? What does it make me think? What beliefs are coming through? And people often use the why technique. Why is this? Why is this? Why is this? Why is this? And then they basically, through doing that, go through the layers. But you can also just go, okay, well, what's showing up for me? Like, what visions, what thoughts, what beliefs, what people, what is showing up when I try and ask myself about that emotion? And you can often get to like a belief level situation. And then you can even go into, okay, where does that come from? What's the original and most potent experience of that event? Now, you can go to multiple, you can go to one, you can go to a past life, you can go all over the place, you can go into the womb. But essentially, the origin of those experiences very often are well and truly predating your current experience, okay, especially if you're an adult. So you will get stuff from early life, you will get ancestral imprinting, you will get womb imprinting, you can get karmic imprinting, you can get all sorts of things that are coming from all over the place, okay? So the main ones that I find, ancestral, womb imprinting, past life stuff, so karmic, interdimensional or parallel life situations, or younger life. So those are probably the main ones that show up. When you can experience and understand where it comes from, then you can go into a process where you actually kind of have that version of you in front of you, and you do different healing processes there. You can bring things like oneness, forgiveness, and love through. You can do compassion work. You can do energetic kind of unhooking. You can do all of the above. You can do different affirmation processes to help release that experience. But essentially what you're doing is you're trying to connect to a wounded version of yourself that has then projected itself across your experience. And by across your experience, I mean across lifetimes, across ancestral patternings, across multiple different experiences in this life. So your experience is your soul kind of incarnating multiple times and having multiple experiences. And very often in some of these life experiences or early life experiences, we'll have a sentence, something like, I will never ... ever again. I'll never trust men. I will never trust people. I will never give my money away, whatever, right? And those become unspoken or spoken vows and contracts, and they do not leave us until we undo them. I wish that was not true, but it's true. So the amount of things that we might need to undo within our own experience is actually quite extensive, or it can be, depending on how many lives you've had, your experiences, how many bad experiences you've had, what you're here to learn. You know, the depth and breadth of your healing really it's just so individual. It just depends on what you've done. It depends on how many times you've done that to yourself, how many bad situations you found yourself in. So then we kind of send compassion and undo those experiences through one is forgiveness and love, sending energy through sending compassion, and doing energy releasing. Okay, so any or all of the above. And then sometimes what we also do then is we go into the Akashic records and then we undo contracts and vows that we have unconsciously or consciously created across our experience that then null and void us to keep continuing doing the same thing. Okay, so this is kind of where we kind of follow the funnel down and we try and clear everything above it, so that when we go into all of those experiences and we can learn how to transmute the wound and change the vows and contracts that we've made to ourselves across our experience, we then give ourselves permission to do something different. Okay? Do we need to dive very specifically and understand each experience? Honestly, I actually think we probably do. I've tried doing it, and doing it definitely has a much greater impact. You can have other people do it for you, and you don't necessarily need to consciously understand it, and it can still have the same impact. So this is where it's a little bit kind of gray. But I do believe that we need to go right down into the karmic imprinting of a situation and release it from that level. Releasing emotions on its own, it's not enough. Understanding the belief on its own, it's not enough. Like, we really need to be meeting you exactly where you're at, and potentially across multiple experiences across your lifetimes in order to clear it. But it's still really important to meet it where it's at and not bypass it, not move past it. So some of the main things that we can do to avoid healing is positively bypassing. Oh, this was all meant for a reason, right? Let's bring in some silver linings here. The silver lining is I've learned ... That's great. But did you heal it first? Because if you didn't heal it first, the silver linings are useless. That's not helpful. We need to be able to meet ourselves in that experience first. And then maybe you can add a silver lining if you really want to, but it's not super necessary. And one of the big things to remember is that our souls are already expressing into the world what we want to create. That ideal self that they're all working towards, or conscious people, spiritual people are working towards, that ideal self is already there. We don't need to tell the universe to create that for us. It's already doing that. We've already done that. What healing does is it helps us to remove everything that's in the way between our beautiful soul light, what we're already calling in, and reality. That's all we're doing. We're removing all of the lenses, all of the beliefs, all of the situations that are clouding our soul's perfection reflected into reality. That's what we're actually doing. So it's not about there's something wrong with you, you've done something wrong, we need to fix you. It's not about that. There is no fixing. You're already perfect. All right. Your soul's expression is already perfect for you and what you're looking for and what you're wanting in your life. Okay. That's a full stop, the end statement. What we are doing is we're giving ourselves permission to get curious between what's between that perfection and the life that is reflected back to us. I hope that makes sense. So it's really around the way that we do that is get curious. We look at our world. We look at where we're suffering, where we're not getting what we want, where we might be sabotaging, where things are not going our way, or where we might be really struggling with something. And that step alone requires an enormous amount of courage. So if you're already doing that, like aces to you, that's amazing. Please keep going with that, because the awareness and taking responsibility for that is super amazing. And I just want to be really clear about responsibility. Responsibility is not, I'm responsible for someone hurting me. I'm responsible for the situation that was out of my control. No. It's responsible in terms of, I know that I've unconsciously attracted this experience and I am choosing to change it. And that choosing to change it is being responsible for the emotions, the behavior, the reaction, the responses that you've created in the moment. Okay, so what that does is it gives you that ability to understand, get great insight into yourself and go, do you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm going to meet myself there, but I'm actually going to choose to change it into what I want instead. And that is like layer 2, probably the most important, if I'm being really honest, because a lot of people have an awareness of what's not working, but they are not willing to take responsibility and do something about it. And then gets the curiosity. Okay, then we get curious and go, okay, cool, how is this showing up? Right? What emotions, what beliefs, what experiences, how is this manifesting in my life? And what's the cause of it? How do I dive enough to get to the cause so that I have enough insight and I'm choosing to change it to the level of right at its core, right where it started. I'm going to transmute that vibration, multiple different ways that we can do that. And it's kind of beyond the scope because there's so many ways which this can work. But like I said, the most powerful one I found is self-directed compassion. And I do that in one-on-ones. Lots of people do it in one-on-ones. It's very, very, very powerful. You can also do it in groups. And what it does is it helps to transmute that original experience so that you can actually start to do things differently. And it really is exceptionally powerful work. It's not an overnight process usually, especially if you've got, multiple layers between, your soul's lighting and your world. But you'll notice as you go that there's kind of less things in your way. If it is that career goal and you did have a really crappy boss and you didn't have the knowledge that you wanted, you might actually discover this incredible course that just takes you step by step through exactly what you need. And then all of a sudden you can jump that hurdle that you've been butting up against for a really long time. That this is the kind of stuff that happens in the real world. Or if you've always attracted really crappy bosses and you don't feel safe with them, this also might be the opportunity where you'll actually get a really incredible boss who's very supportive, who sees your potential and nurtures you in that, right? So this is where those things can start changing in real life. And this is what we really want to see. If you're doing a lot of internal work and it's not showing up in your life, you have not gone deep enough, okay? I learnt this the hard way. I've done years and years and years of healing, and I had not gotten to the core of a lot of it. And that stuff is the bomb. That is the change. So when you can get all the way down into the core of it, you transmute that, you heal that. Those wounded versions do not need to live in front of your soul light anymore. They just kind of evaporate, and those versions of you integrate into your being, okay? And then your lens will be different. How your life is different. What the world reflects back at you is different, and that's what we want to see, okay? Healing is useless unless you have external change as well. But healing and change can only happen permanently without constant effort if you do the internal stuff first. You do the internal change, the external world changes. If the external world then bounces back, there's more internal work to be done. You want this external change to be permanent and balanced and safe and flowing, because it's going to reflect your soul's light, okay? And this is where you can kind of know if and or when to keep doing more, and if and or when it's working. All right, I hope that's really helpful. I hope that gives you some insight into what healing actually is and how we can actually change it, and then what the outcome is. If you want to learn more, if you want to do healing, you can do it in group sessions. So I do this with my Intuitive Mastery School. It's incredibly affordable for online coaching, which is what I'm basically doing, teaching and channeling meditations, a lot of healing transformations and transmissions in my school. We have years and years and years of content here. There's like so many different topics that you can dive into, and we have live classes every week to hold that space for you to ask questions, for you to connect in with other like-minded people. It's really, really powerful. And then if you want something a little bit more one-on-one, I do that too. There's loads of practitioners that do. Find someone who resonates, find them and have a session with them and experience it for yourself, because it really is a very powerful thing. And what we're looking for is for your soul light to be guiding your life without anything blocking its way. And I hope for 100% of you that this is what you're looking for and that you are on that journey, because you will not regret it in the long term. All right, sending lots of love, and I will see you next time.